All right, how's it going out there? Can you guys hear me? Will, can you hear me okay? I think we're live and ready to rock. So I'm Mike Brightman. My company is Brightman Designs, and we do offer design, drafting, visualization, and workflow training services. Now that last part is really what we're talking about today with this Lumion Workflow Series. So our website, Sketchup for Professionals, that is where I outline my process for design, drafting, modeling, rendering, everything that goes into the design process. We have a very streamlined, disciplined workflow. We only use SketchUp and Layout, our Condoc tools, and Lumion, or at least those are the four main components. So we do use some other plugins, we use Photoshop, but when it comes to the bulk of our work as designers, drafters, draftsmen, and rendering and visualization and animations, those are our tools. That is what we focus on. So if you're interested in implementing our workflow, check out SketchUp for Professionals. My book is the SketchUp Workflow for Architecture, and the intent there is that when you focus in and you get good at one thing, you can move through much quicker than being jack of all trades and learning all these different programs and trying to be good at all these different different softwares, and it just gets really convoluted and expensive. Our workflow is super streamlined and concise. So check it out at sketchupforprofessionals.com. And of course, if you click on the blog, you go over to our blog, and that's where you're going to find all of our latest posts, and this is our Lumion Workflow Series 2 Night Render. So let's talk a little bit about that. So the first installment of our Lumion Workflow Series, we focus on a daytime render. Those are easy. So daytime renders, you don't have to worry about any lighting. You just let the sun hit the building in an interesting way and hit render. And it's fast renders, no placement of lights. It's just a much easier type of rendering to create. Now, the nighttime renders require lighting, a different blend of effects, and some different techniques to make them come out beautiful. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And I want you to know that we create these renderings. This is our business. This is what we do day to day. Is we are hired by architects to create visualizations off of their 2D plans. So the project I'm going to show you today is a real project. We were under the stress of completing this project with a fixed fee. We had to budget our hours, and whenever you're working on a fixed fee, you're trying to make more dollars per hour. I want to get this thing out the door quick, and that's why I'm always striving to know the best tips and tricks and all those shortcuts that get this work done extremely fast. So that's what the Lumion Workflow Series is all about. I'm showing you all the tips and tricks that I'm learning along the way. And believe me, we're always searching for new tips and tricks. So stay tuned. You know, we've got more of these Workflow Series tutorials coming, and I've got some really cool stuff with material sets and merging models, and really there's no end because new features come out, new tips and tricks are found, and then I'm going to share those with you. That's what SketchUp for Professionals is all about. So be sure that you sign up for our newsletter if you've RSVP'd for any of these Lumion Lumion webinars. Then you are on our mailing list, and stay tuned on that. You'll always be the first to know. And then you'll also be the first to know when we chop up this webinar and redistribute it as a tutorial. It'll show up on that Lumion Workflow Series Office Night Render. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's get started. I'm going to hop over here, and I'm going to start by going to our 3D warehouse page. So on the 3D warehouse, let's see. And sorry, let me back this up just a moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're actually going to cover today. That would be important. So to create a night render, it's super important to place your lights accurately and quickly. All right. So in Lumion, it's difficult to place a light source or a spotlight right in the middle of a can light. That's a difficult thing to do. It's actually, I would even say it's impossible because there's no way to snap to that point and get your light source placed absolutely perfectly in that can light. Now, why does it matter if it's perfect? Well, in my opinion, if all of your light sources are just a little bit off center, then they're gonna like cast a shadow on the wall, and the scalloping of the light source on the wall is going to be irregular. And it's just not the right look. I want it to just be this perfect thing, and if you just get them a little off center, they start going big scallop, small scallop, big, and it just looks not right. So when I'm placing lights, I want to do it very quickly, and I want to do it extremely accurately and precisely. And I can do that by placing my lights in SketchUp, and I use light nodes. And then I do a node placement in Lumion. So that's really like the big superpower I'm going to teach you today is node placement. And if you've never used node placement, this is going to blow your mind. If you've never even heard of it, this is going to absolutely blow your mind when I show you how much faster you can be when it comes to placing objects in SketchUp and then basically swapping them out in Lumion. So let's get started. I'm going to show you that today. Here we go. Over to our 3D warehouse, and I'm going to type into the search bar. I'm just going to type in Lumion Workflow and do a search. Now you can see that it brings up all of our models right away, and here's our Lumion Workflow Series 02. And you can also find under collections, we do have a Lumion Workflow tutorial series. So let's just go in there. So here's our model that we're going to use today, and I'll bring that up and check it out. This is an office building, again, a real project that we worked on and built it, rendered it, got it out the door. And I'm going to show you the tips and tricks that we use to get this out and actually make money on this project. 9 megabytes. That is a super lightweight model. So I'll go to SketchUp 2019, download that to my desktop temp, and click Save. All right, so then I've downloaded that file. I'll just click on it down there in my downloads bar, and we're going to open up this SketchUp model. Let's see. Let's just open it here. So open from our desktop. Let's go to Desktop Temp and open up our office building. Here it comes. So we'll say nope, and I'm going to hop back over here. Okay, here's our SketchUp model, and then let's get started. The very first thing that I like to do is send this SketchUp model over to Lumion. And there's no easier way to do that than to split my screen here, and in Lumion, here's the start screen. I just pick a plain environment, and there's no quicker way to get your SketchUp model into Lumion than clicking that Live Sync button. You push that button one time, SketchUp or the Live Sync plugin bundles this model up, sends it over to Lumion, and then it's going to place that model at 000, and it's going to start the camera syncing. So there we go. We're good to go. Now, here's the thing about when I send this model over into Lumion is that this particular model, it is located at 000. This is going to come into play today in a big way. So the base point, where we position our models, is super critical for node placement. Now, I'm sure if you've watched my tutorials, you always hear me say 050. I just put it at 050 because it's just the same number every time. You could pick your own number, doesn't matter. But as long as it's easy to remember, I just want my models to be placed at the 00 mark in Lumion, and then I want it to be lifted up by, say, 5 feet, just so that I can get the parking lot off the terrain. So let's do that. So my SketchUp model is imported. It's at 000. I'm going to bump that up to 5. And now you can see that my streets are no longer competing with my terrain. All right, so we're good to go. Okay, so now I have adjusted this model just a little bit. So I broke out these planters, all right, and I did this for a reason. So I'm going to right-click on the building and choose Hide, and I'm going to right-click on the site and choose Hide. So I only want to look at these planters. I just want to focus in and talk about a real simple node placement. All right.
Now, before we get to that, this node placement thing, you might have to watch this tutorial. If you're new to this, you're going to have to watch it maybe at least 2 times and until you really get the hang of it, and you got to practice it because there's a lot of little nuances to it. Now, the way that node placements work is you have a component in SketchUp, and it's just a super simple, we use like a triangle for the spotlight and then this other simple shape for a tree. Well, it's this extremely simplified component, and you place it in SketchUp. And then you're going to take all of those nodes, say for instance of one tree type, you're going to put all those nodes into its own component, and you've got to set the component axes to match the world axes of SketchUp. That is critical, because when you save those out and import them into Lumion, you're going to set those node models at 0, 5, 0. That's why that placement point is so critical here. So we are going to use these nodes. Now, the good news is that I've already created nodes that we use internally for our rendering projects. I've now uploaded those to the 3D warehouse, and they are yours to use. They are super powerful, simple little 3D models. I'm going to show you how to use those. All right. So let's go and expand our SketchUp window first, and then I have a keyboard shortcut, Control-D. That's how I hide my dialogues. I just like to get those out of the way sometimes, especially when I'm splitting my screen. So if I go over to my component browser and type into the 3D warehouse, I'm going to type in Lumion Nodes and hit enter. We're going to search the 3D warehouse and check this out. We have a collection by Brightman Designs called Lumion Nodes. And let's take a look. We have a tree node, a spotlight node, a line light node, and a shrub node. I'm going to bring each one of these guys into my model like this, and let's scoot this guy over here like that, and then lastly our shrub like that. All right, and let's just take a look at these nodes. Super simple shapes, right? So if I double click into this shrub node, you can see that the component axes are right here at the center, like the bottom center point. Now I can tell you that when this node gets basically swapped in Lumion, the tree is going to be placed right here at these component axes. And a tree is always going to stand straight up in Lumion. There's no way to like get that thing to place and shift around. All right, so same exact concept with our tree node. The tree is going to be placed right here at our component axes. That's where it gets placed in Lumion. Now, the only difference, these are the exact same function. You know, it's just a visual representation of like, maybe you want to have a bunch of nodes for one tree type, and then you're going to use the same, then you can use the same tree node, but make it a unique component. And that way you could kind of swap it out for a different one. But the point is that it's just a visual differentiation between a shrub and a tree. They have the exact same functionality. And to make that point, you could even just use a simple triangle standing up. Doesn't even have to look like a tree. Doesn't mean anything. I just like the way it looks. So anyway, then this is our spotlight node. Now this one gets a little bit tricky. See how this one came in on its side, like laying down? Well, the way that Lumion works is it's going to shine this way along that triangle, all right? And if I double click in here, I can tell you that Lumion will place the light right here at these component axes. That is where that light source will land. Now, the difference is that a light source can be rotated around to face any direction. So when Lumion places that light source, it is going to shine on the dotted green axis. That is the direction. And a few of you might be raising your hand saying, why? I don't know why. I think it has something to do with Lumion's coordinate system being like X, Y, Z, and Y being up, whereas it seems that like in SketchUp, Z is up. But whatever, doesn't matter. Point is, as long as you know that a light placed off of a node is going to shine along the dotted green direction, you're in good shape. Then you can just run with it. So that's what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to back out of this. And then one other node is our line light node. Okay, so this one
is super handy. And I know I've used this in a tutorial before, like on the master suite. And the thing about a line light is that they're really, really handy for like cove lighting. So you can put these line lights up in a cove and then like make them long and thin. And but if they're not placed absolutely perfectly, then you get some uneven lighting, and it's impossible to get them placed perfectly. You'll never do it. It's just there's no way to snap to your model and to center it perfectly. So you want to place the node in Lumion and then node place in, you want to place the node in SketchUp, save it out, do your node placement in Lumion, and then you get absolute mathematic perfection. Your lighting in those cove ceilings is nice and clean and soft and perfect all the way around. That's the idea here. All right, so same techniques with all of these nodes, but I can tell you that today, the only two nodes that we're gonna use are the tree and the spotlight. All right, so let's do that. Let's get our tree placed right in the middle of our planter. All right, so I'm going to move that bottom base point over here, and I'm going to turn on my hidden geometry for just a moment. I'll go to View and turn on Hidden Geometry. Now, when my hidden geometry is on, I can snap to the midpoint in the group and click. So now my tree is absolutely perfectly situated right in the middle of that planter. So we're good to go. I have a shortcut, Alt-H. I turn hidden geometry on and off all the time. So back out of there, and now I need to get my spotlight node over here. All right, so for this guy, I'm going to rotate it, and we'll just click and drag with our rotate tool, let go, and that's going to set our center point of rotation. I click once to set my reference line, move my cursor to suggest a direction, and then in the bottom right corner of my screen, I'm getting my angle. I'm going to type 90, enter. If you need a hand with move tool, rotate tool, push pull, follow me, grouping, layering, SketchUp for Professionals is our Get Started Now course. It's like 12 hours long. It's everything you need to know about SketchUp. So anyway, that's how I use the rotate tool. I'm now going to move this from point to point, and I snapped it to a midpoint. I'll use my move tool again, tap Control, and that's going to allow me to make a copy, and we're going to snap to our midpoint over there. So we are now in good shape. We have our tree and our two spotlight nodes, and so what I'm going to do now is select both of these, and then we're going to make a copy and an array. So using my move tool, I click once to pick it up, tap Control to make a copy, and then I'm going to click to place it over here. Now I'm going to back up and I'm going to type 4x and hit enter. You can see the 4x in the bottom right corner of my screen. See, that makes 4 copies down the line. Think of it like a copy machine where you have your original and then it spits out 4 copies. So that's how that copy and array works. All right, so now we're in good shape, but let's take a look at what we've got. All right, so I'm going to hide my dialogues here and just take a look. Now, these trees, these nodes, this is not really what I want. You know, I don't want that look in Lumion. I want it to be real trees. But we don't have the ability to do this like component swap, right? Now, if I had it my way, or if I could just wave a magic wand and know how to just make amazing features in Lumion, which I know is super challenging, and it's easy for someone like myself to say, oh, what it should do is this. But really what would be handy is if Lumion picked up the idea that this is a component, and then I could just replace it with something else. But that feature it's not there, so we have node placement, which is killer, because now we can just do a mass placement very quickly. So we're going to need to get these nodes saved out of SketchUp and re-imported into Lumion as their own file. All right, so that's what we're going to do now. All right, so I'm going to expand my SketchUp window, and I'm going to save these guys out or create components based on the objects that I want to place. All right, so I've selected all of my trees. And let me make another, this is another real important comment about SketchUp in general. This right here is the world origin.
Now I'm making that term up. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called in 2D CAD. You know, you could change the UCS system around and you can have different axes, but the absolute 0, 0, 0 is what I'm seeing right here. Now, how do I know that? You know, it doesn't look any different. Well, I can tell you that if I use the axes tools and then I come over here and like do some weird axis like that, well, this is just the sketching context. I've changed the sketching context. So now the axes are all over here and wonky. And what that means is that when I'm drawing, you know, now we're drawing on that sketching context, on this different set of axes. Now, I can tell you that if you just simply right-click on any axis and choose Reset, that will put your axes back to the absolute world origin of 0, 0, 0 in SketchUp. Now, check this out. If I right-click, my reset is grayed out. If I see that my reset is grayed out, then I know that I am absolutely at that baseline 0, 0, 0. And this is where, this is what Lumion is picking up on. All right, so it is reading the world origin, and that's what you want to stick with. So when I imported the entire model, we put this point at 0, 0, 0. And when I import my trees, my tree nodes, we're going to need the component to have the exact same base point or origin point. All right, so that's what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to right click on the selection and choose Make Component. Now I'm going to call the component nodes underscore trees, like that. Now, I don't care about the description, but what's absolutely critical here is Set Component Axes. I'll click on Set Component Axes, come over here, and click 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now I can click on Create. Make sure that your Replace Selection with Component is checked on. I'll click Create. So now, if I double click into this component, you can see that the component's axes are over here. So we're in good shape. Next, I'm going to select all my lights. Watch this. Here's a quick way to do that. I'm going to select my tree group and my planter group, and then I'm going to hold Shift and invert my selection. All right. So now I'm going to right click and choose Make Component, and we're going to call these nodes underscore lights. Like that. I'm going to click, and you know what, this time I'm going to make an intentional mistake. I'm going to forget to set my component axes. All right. So we have Replace Selection with Component, and I'll click Create. So then I just want to check my work, and I double click in. I go, oh no, my component axes are actually set over here. The component axes are the kind of thicker red, green, and blue line. Now, if you've done that, there's no big deal. All of this stuff is editable. So I can just right click on any axis and choose Reset. So that's going to put my sketching context back to 0, 0, 0. Then I can right click in the white space and choose Change Axes. Now I'm going to set the component axes over there, and we're back to good. So now my trees have the same base point as my model, and my lights have the same base point as my model. We are in good shape. So the last part of this is that I need to then, or one of the final steps, like I said, there are quite a few steps that you need to be aware of, but I need to save these out, and then we're going to import them in. So to save them out, I just right click on the component and choose Save As. I'm going to save this to my desktop and temp folder. And this is already called Nodes Trees because I gave this component a name. So I'll save it, and then I'm going to right click on my lights and choose Save As, and then this goes to Desktop Temp, and you can see this one is called Nodes Lights, and we'll save it there. All right, let's hop back into Lumion. All right, and let's see, we'll split our screen for just a moment. You can see that our live sync is still kicking, and let's expand our, let me hop back into SketchUp. The last part now, these SketchUp nodes have been saved out, and I don't need them in SketchUp anymore. And if for some reason I wanted them back, I already have them saved out. So I could always get them back. And so maybe I would put those in like a project folder under miscellaneous if you follow our file management system. But most of the time, these node
placement files are throwaway models. So I'm just going to trash them. So I'm going to delete my tree nodes, and I'm going to delete my light nodes. And see, those went away. So now we no longer have those in Lumion. Now, what we need to do is bring them back. So in Lumion, I need to go and import those SketchUp models. So I'm going to go to Import New Model, and we are going to go to our desktop temp. So let's go to desktop temp, and here's my nodes trees. I'm going to click on Open, and we'll just go ahead and bring that guy in. And there's my nodes, okay? I'm not even going to try and get it right. I'll just click. Then I'm going to push the M key. That brings me to my select tool. So now I can move things around, and then I can click on Type In. Check it out. The position of this model needs to be 0, 5, 0. And look at that. This model is now this independent piece that's brought in. All right. Now, with my tree still selected, this SketchUp model of just the tree nodes is still selected. I'm going to go to my advanced options and click on Place Item on Nodes, like that. Now, I'm going to choose an object from the nature library, and I know that on this project we used a birch tree. So I click on Search, and then I'm going to type into the search field birch. And I'm actually pretty familiar with the birch trees in Lumion, and I know that, like, you know, any of these guys are going to look good. And check that out. See what it's doing? I can go through, and this is actually some improved functionality. This node placement has been around for a while, but like I want to say in Lumion 9, we got some improved functionality and the ability to kind of not just dump that one model. It's now we can choose from all the different libraries, and we can see them placed in real time, you know, before we actually commit to the final model. So I think I like this one, and then I can click on OK. And look what happened. It got rid of my node model. It's gone, right? Perfect. Let's do it again. I'm going to click, this time I'm going to bring the sun down to kind of a night render here. I'm going to go back to my objects, and we're going to import a new model. This time I'm going to bring in my nodes lights and choose Open. All right. So now we're just going to say OK. And now these are the lights, the nodes that represent my lights. So I'll just click once there. I'm going to hit the M key on the keyboard and go down here to Type In. And here I can set these guys to be at 0, 5, and 0. Like that. Check it out. Just like that, my light nodes are now perfectly in place. Wonderful. Now, the light nodes are still selected. So if they weren't selected, you know, if I like deselect all, you just need to make sure that that model is selected. Then on the advanced options, I can click on Place Item on Nodes. This time, I'm going to choose from my lights and utilities. And then I'm going to come over here and click on any of these different lights, and you can see that we have, like, you know, different arrays and spreads of lights. And you know, I don't know that it truly matters. I just pick one that's kind of interesting and different than the others, and I think we're in good shape there. So check that out. Now we're getting these up lights on the trees perfect, just like that. So I'll check OK, and we are good to go. Now, there is one little thing that you need to clean up, and that's over here. Check it out. This is my model base point. This is the world origin, and we placed the objects on the node origins, and we get one on the world origin. So all I need to do is come over here, and I'm going to delete, we'll go with our tree, and I'm going to delete my tree, and I'll go to my lights and utilities and delete my light. And now all of this is still intact like that. There we are. Okay, so now I'm going to split my screens again and hop back into SketchUp with the split screen. I'm going to go to Edit and choose Unhide All. And now there we are. So you can see how easy it can be to just do some node placement. You know, it's not impossible. And imagine if you had, like, you know, if you're using a plugin like Scatter, and drop in like a whole forest, and then you want to just do nodes in Lumion, you can do that. Also, if you've placed your lights already in SketchUp, you can just swap, like duplicate those light components and then swap them with the nodes and then run it over here. So this node placement is extremely powerful. It is well worth taking, like say it takes you 2 hours to tinker with this tutorial and really understand it. And like, you know, the first time you do it, you'll probably goof it up. Second time, you'll probably have it right. Third, fourth, fifth, now you own it. So just take the 2 hours it takes to fully understand the axes, the sketching context, you know, saving these components out, get your process dialed in, and when it comes time to use it on a real project, you will blow through it. So super powerful. Good news, I'm going to show you how to do this again. We're going to go through and we're going to do all of our lights using node placement. All right, so this is kind of the simple introduction to node placement, but now we're going to hop back. We're going to go back and do all of our lights. All right. Now, before we get to that, I want to get our Lumion, our Lumion scenario, our Lumion scene buttoned up. So in this next part, we're going to adjust our materials and we're going to add some objects. But I got to tell you that the focus of this webinar and this tutorial, it's not, you know, the focus is not on adjusting materials and making perfect materials. And the focus is not on how to place all the different entourage objects. So we're going to use a material set. Now, a material set allows me to just load a bunch of materials right into Lumion and have instant results. And I use this for demos, but we also use this in our workflow. So spoiler alert, we are going to cover this in a future Lumion workflow tutorial. But for today, we're just going to kind of use it to jumpstart the process. Another technique we're going to use in this portion is merge scenes. So we're going to merge all the entourage objects that we've already placed into this model. And I just like to keep building on the same file rather than opening a new file. And I think it's more convincing to understand that we are working on the same file throughout this whole process. So let's hop in there. I'll show you a few, just, you know, if you're unfamiliar with Lumion, I'll show you how to add a material. Then we're going to load a material set. I'll show you to add mass place some cars, and then we'll load merge our scenes. So let's get to it. So for this portion, I am going to bring our sun back up like that, and let's take a look at some of our materials. The first thing that you'll notice is that any material that had the word glass in it is already set up as glass. So that's pretty handy, right? So I can just click on my materials, and you can go and click on that glass, and you can see that this is our Lumion Pure Glass. It's super easy to change that around if you want it to be something different, but I think I'm pretty happy where it's at. We're not going to get into all that. Also, the grass, you know, like right now, if you've ever used, if you're familiar, the nature library has 3D grass. All I need to do is click on one of these checkerboard patterns and you get absolutely fantastic grass. This was a new feature in Lumion 9, and this was a huge game changer. I mean, to just get these like beautiful mow patterns in front of your buildings is so much more convincing. So I love that. And then also there's all kinds of material libraries. I can go in here and go to like nature and go to aged and use like aged iron and double click on it. I can mess with like the colorization, make it really dark. We can smooth the edges. You know, you can kind of see those subtle things happening. You can back off the weathering. So if you want a lot of weathering, a little weathering. But anyway, the point is that Lumion has a huge material library. I forget, hundreds, maybe thousands. I forget exactly how many, but it's pretty much everything you need to get started and make a beautiful image. But today, what we're going to do is just load a material set. So let's just do that. Let's go to up here on our advanced, was this like our advanced options window? We can click on load material set. So I need to be like clicking on have a model selected and then hit load material set. This is my office night render assets, and I'm going to load up these materials. So what this does is basically the SketchUp materials have a name definition. And I've gone in and we've already assigned and mapped a Lumion definition to those SketchUp name definitions. And this material set is just saving that linkage. And so that's what you're seeing here, is that we're going to take all these different materials and load up different properties. You'll see, you know, the iron changed a little bit. You know, we have our asphalt kind of changed and became something different. So we're in good shape there. Okay. Now, again, so the libraries are really, let me click Save Changes. Really, the libraries in Lumion, that is something that does set it apart from a lot of other rendering programs, because when you have Lumion, you get all the objects and all of the materials. And a lot of other rendering programs, you have to go and sort, you know, find that stuff. You got to go track down those libraries, you got to track down the people, and Lumion just has it on one install, everything you need to create these images. So let's go to our Objects tab, and let's place people and animals. So I'll click on the Place tool, and you can see we can place like a woman jogging, you know, a woman walking. We can have a woman standing there, and then we can go to like our 3D men, and you know, you can place the guy on the skateboard cruising along, and a guy checking his phone over here. So there's all these different objects that you can add and breathe life into your model. And of course, you know, we don't want people running in place. There's very quick and easy tools for animating these different characters. Same thing with cars. Check this out. I'm going to do a quick demo on placing a bunch of vehicles. I'll go to Mass Placement, and I'm just going to click once here, move all the way down to the end, and click once there. And then you can see that we have a car added, so I'll just pick another SUV here and click on the plus sign. Pick another one, click on the plus sign. Let's go over here to our cars. I'll pick a car, click on the plus sign. You can see that it's adding those to the mix. All right, we'll pick the station wagon, plus sign, and then one more here. All right, so now I can turn up the number of items, and we can randomize the spacing along this path. And that way it just kind of makes them a little more convincing. And then I'll check OK. Now, check it out. This is already loaded up. I can just do another path like that, check OK. And on this side of the road, I'm going to go the opposite direction, like this, and check OK, and then go this way and check OK. You can do the exact same thing with people, you know, if you want to just mass place these objects. Now, I would say that a traffic jam isn't exactly what I want to represent. So usually what I do is I just add a lot of extra objects, and then I thin the herd. You know, I just come in here and, or maybe like over here, I'd want these cars to be kind of more backed up, like they're waiting for the stoplight. These guys are maybe a little bit more thinned out because they've been moving by. So anyway, the point is that I like to use that additive and subtractive method, just like modeling. I might dump in a lot of extra objects and then just thin it out afterwards. So anyway, just like we loaded our material set, I don't want to sit here and add all these different objects. What I'm going to do is merge the scene. So I'm going to go over here to Load Scene, and this button here, if you've never used this, this is a great way to distribute work amongst a team. So one way to do this is, like, if I'm in here building out the final effects, working on all the texturing and getting the camera views set up, maybe someone else is working on all of the landscape elements and planting all the trees and all the people. Well, it makes it really easy for them to say, hey Mike, we're ready to rock, just go ahead and merge this other scene. So check this out. I've got this office building entourage. I'm going to click open, and we're going to merge this entourage scene that someone else worked on into this current scene that I'm working on. So I have a couple different choices. I can either add the models from that file and just dump them in, or I can remove the models that are in my model and add the other ones. Now, when it comes to the nature library, I've already placed those trees, so I don't want to lose them. So I'm not going to remove them, I'm just going to add the additional trees in. But when it comes to the model library, I can tell you that I want to remove the cars and the people that I just haphazardly placed, because I know that I've got a much more accurate placement of those different characters. So for that one, I'm going to remove the models in the current scene and add the models. All right. And then as far as imported, I'm going to skip those right now because you can just disregard them. All right. So I'll check OK. And then that's going to bring all of those pieces from that model in here. So if you can imagine, somebody else could have been working in Lumion, and if they were disciplined and accurate and had their model placed at 050, again, I do it the same way every time, 050. If they place it at 050 and then add all those trees, they can say, hey Mike, load up and merge that scene and dump these in there and you're good to go. So we are in good shape. That's materials and objects. And if you're looking for more information on, or more in-depth tutorials, check out the first installment of our Lumion Workflow tutorial series. In that one, I really went over placing all the objects, layering, and also got more in-depth on materials. But that's not our focus on this one. So I think we're in good shape. All right, so let me dim the lights here, and we're gonna go to weather and just bring the sun down and check it out. So we are in good shape. I'm gonna show you the camera view that I'm going after. It's gonna be from across the street, and we're going to, something along these lines, except I'm gonna get my focal length to be much tighter on that building, all right? So we are definitely lacking on this scene. The lighting, while it's super cool that the trees are lit up, and I like that look, we are definitely missing a lot of lights in the building. It's a pretty bland scene, right? So we need to get some node placement going. And I'm gonna set up my camera right now. I think that's a good practice, is to just get your camera where it should be, so that way you're really focused on only working on what you can see. All right, so for this particular focal length, I would set this to be, I'm gonna try like 45, and usually higher is better. Or higher is definitely better for exterior renderings. And if you're interior, you might start with like 25. All right, so something like this, let me back out just a little bit. I want to catch the train coming into focus here, and I want the shrubs. You can see that these shrubs right here, I placed those because I want it to soften that street. I don't just want this giant asphalt intersection. I thought it was kind of nice just to pad that a little bit. All right, so I'm going to take a snapshot here. All right, so I can tell you that the parking garage needs some light, the stair tower needs some light, this building just needs some light in it. All right, we're definitely lacking there, and I suppose we could consider doing some uplighting on the trees, but we'll see if we get there. All right, so we're gonna hop back into build mode. I'm gonna split my screens again. You can see that my live sync is still kicking. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to go through SketchUp, and I'm going to place all of my light nodes. All right. So just like we did before, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to bring up my my dialogues, and we're going to use our. Let's just do this. We'll go to search the 3D warehouse and do Lumion Nodes. You can always get to our collection by doing Lumion Nodes, and here we have our node spotlight. And I'm going to drop this in, and I suppose I'll work in here first, like this. Drop it on the ceiling. I'm going to use my rotate tool, and let's see. We'll go. Where's my? Here's my insertion point. So with my rotate tool, I'm going to click and drag, and then rotate this guy down by 90, like that. All right, and then while we're working here, I'm gonna just hide my windows, get those out of the way. That's gonna allow me to kind of bounce in and out of here rather quickly. So I just double clicked into that group here. So my windows live one level in, and I'm gonna right click on these and choose hide. And that gets rid of those windows. When I back out here, now that's where my node lives. All right, so then for this node placement, I might just, I'm just gonna eyeball this. And if you had a ceiling grid that you really wanted to be perfect with, you can do that. But for this particular project, it was just more important that we had some sort of a grid going on. And I'll do 4 divisions. And then I'm gonna make a copy of all these guys. And I'm gonna use this edge right here. And so I'm gonna make a copy of them, down the line like that.
and then I'm going to say like 5 times enter. So I just made kind of a nice long grid there. All right, and then what I found is that it's pretty handy to like take all these nodes and make them a group. So if they're a group, it makes it much easier for me to isolate them and work on them. All right, and then you can always go to View, Component Edit, Hide Rest of Model. You can see that I have a keyboard shortcut, Control H. I use that all the time. All right, so that's in good shape. I'm just going to take all these lights here. I'm going to make a copy of them straight down. I'm going to use my Scale tool and scale it to -1. This way I have lights shining down and I have lights shining up. And then I'm going to select all, and I'll make a copy of all these lights, and I'm going to tap the up arrow key, snap to my ceiling, and we're going to do that 3 times enter. And now we have lights all the way distributed throughout this building. So that's pretty handy, right? And the next thing we need to do is add some lights to our stair tower. So I might just, grab this one and place it over here. Now for this stair tower, this is pretty visible. So I'm going to be a little bit more accurate when I'm doing this. So I'm going to make a copy of this guy all the way to the end and type 5 divided by enter. And then I'm going to delete out the pieces that I don't want. So I might just keep these 2. And then I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to make a copy from here all the way over on the green and say 5 divided by enter. And I'm just going to keep the 4 in the middle, that looks fine like that. So those will be my lights in Lumion. And those guys I'm going to leave alone, but these I might just take and make a copy straight down like that. All right, so we're in good shape there. And then I'm going to take, let's take these 2. This is kind of a cool trick. This is like an advanced inference, all right? So if I were to just try to make a copy of this down here, I would have to do just like eyeball it. And I never eyeball in SketchUp. It's perfect. It's got to be snapped to a point. So what I'm going to do is a super advanced inference that's going to save me a ton of clicks. I'm going to hover on this edge. And if I hold shift, you can see that now that base point is constrained. And if I put my cursor on that surface, it's like lining up that base point. It's snapping there. And so now I'll click. Now that starts my move. And so it's starting from like a known base point. And if I just snap down here to my midpoint, that was like a super accurate, precise move and copy. Next, I'm going to use, we're just going to do like a copy here. Make sure I've only selected those. And I'll tap Control, tap the up arrow key, snap to there, and we're going to do that one 3 times as well. All right, so I think we're in good shape. So we have all of our lighting in our stair tower, and let's just do like a simple, quick lighting over here. I'll make a copy of this guy straight across like that. Do 2 divided by enter, or 4 divided by enter, and we'll clear out some of these that we're not going to use. And then I'll scoot this down the hallway like this, and we'll go like, let's scoot this just back off that window a touch, and then make a copy of it like, say, 10 feet, and we'll do that like 5 times, enter. And then we're going to take all these guys. I'm not going to do the whole up and down thing. That was more important for this building. I think we're going to see more of this one. But we'll see how it looks. We'll do 3 times, enter. And now we have all of our lights there. So we're in pretty good shape. The last part, you can see, placing these nodes. It's good to be savvy with SketchUp and all those commands. But imagine trying to place all of these nodes, placing all of these lights accurately inside of Lumion. That would be a super difficult thing to do. And I got to be honest, it would not be accurate. It just wouldn't happen because there's nothing to snap to inside of Lumion. All right, so I'm going to copy that back, say 10 feet, 2 times, and then I'll make a copy of this guy like that. Select those, copy straight down, and do that 3 times. And actually, I'm going to only do that 2 times, enter. And the last part, let's just finish the thought. Placing these nodes does take a moment, but either way, you can see that It's super fast, way faster than doing this in Lumion. All right, last portion here, we're gonna take this, make a copy. This part is definitely not the focus of the rendering, so I'm just gonna kinda send that one down the way a bit and do 3 divided by enter. All right, and if I hide the rest of the model, look at all those lights. That's a ton of lights that we just copied and moved around rather quickly. All right, so all of these different lights are going to turn into Lumion spotlights. All right, so I think we're in good shape there. So let's just run through the process. I'm going to take this group, right click on it, and choose Make Component. And I'm going to set the component axes. And those component axes, of course, need to be at the origin point over here. And I'm going to call this component, what do we do? Nodes underscore lights 02. All right. So again, these are like throwaway files. They don't need to be, you could save them, but I typically don't. They're just throwaways. Now, see how those nodes show up in my Lumion model? Well, that's no good. In SketchUp, I need to delete them because those need to be their own light or their own model in Lumion. All right, I'm going to leave the lights turned down here, and I'm going to go back to Objects, and we're going to choose Import New Model from, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't save it out. So I'm going to undo that delete, and I'm going to right-click on this and choose Save As. Our lights 02, it's already pathed to desktop temp, and I'm going to save it there. Now, I get back into Lumion, there's my nodes lights 02. I'm going to choose Open, bring that guy in, say OK, and look at all of those nodes. Oh, and shoot, I'm on a mass placement, so I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go back to a single placement, and we're going to place one of those nodes. All right, now I pressed the M key. That brings me back to my select tool. I love these keyboard shortcuts that we've got now in Lumion. I'm going to click on Type In, and we are going to type in 0, 5, and 0. And now, all those nodes are now positioned and lined up perfectly. The node import is still selected, so I'll go to my advanced options. I'll click on Place Item on Nodes, go to my Lights and Utilities, and let's see the magic happen. A bunch of lights come in just like that. Absolutely amazing. So this is how you save time. This is how your dollars per hour increase when you're working on fixed fees. This is how you get out of the office early when you're working on renderings. So don't agonize, learn the tricks, and you can do this stuff so fast. Lumion gives you all the tools you need to be super fast, make these beautiful images quickly, easily. All right, so I'm gonna go with, it really doesn't matter. I like that lamp there, and I'll say okay. All right, so now I've got like plenty of light coming out of there. I think we're in good shape. I dig it. So let's split our screen for just a moment, and I'm going to go back into SketchUp. I'm going to unhide those windows. All right, so now we're like back to good, and also you can see that my nodes still exist in here. So I need to delete the node file, and so all these guys, all those nodes, I'm going to delete them, and we're good. So now we've got like all of our setup here. And that's looking much better. I want that where the light kind of spills out and the whole thing looks like it's glowing. So that is looking pretty good. Let's just take a quick look at our camera and see where we're at. All right, looking much better, right? But we're not there yet. So this is like zero effects. This is just baseline Lumion. So the effects is where we really start to dial it up. So we're going to build an effect stack that is specifically made for nighttime renders. Now, this is where the Lumion workflow really, where it really, you'll see the pattern. We build the model, we do the texturing, we do the objects, we build an effect stack. I do it the same way every time.
And you know what? I build the effect stack the same way every time, but there's some subtle differences if I'm going for a nighttime render versus a daytime render or a seasonal render or whatever it may be. I just need to approach it a little bit different, tweak a few of the settings, and go for a different angle. So on this particular project, I'm going to show you how to dial in an effect stack from scratch for a nighttime render. So let's get to it. So first things first, I'll click on Add Effect, and right now, let's see. Let me make this point. I'm going to go back into build mode, and I'm going to dial the sun up. All right. So the sun, usually when you're working, you want the sunshine happening there. Okay. So the default or the baseline of the lighting engine, I suppose, in Lumion is based on build mode sun. So now check it out. In my photo studio, the sun is up. So the first thing I want to do is add the sun effect and control this. I want it to be a nighttime render like that. Okay. So regardless of what I do in build mode, I got to force a certain look in my photo studio. All right, I definitely don't mess with the brightness. I think we're good on sun. And let's see, let's click Add Effect, and we'll go here. And let's add our shadows. Now I can tell you that I always jack up the Omni Shadow, and then I always do soft shadows and fine detail. And interior, exterior, I'm actually not positive. I lean towards it's possible this would be better. I think it controls like the brightness of the shadows. I'll put it on exterior, but it's such a subtlety that no big deal. And reflections, super important. So of course, speed ray reflection should always be turned on. I think that when I turn that on, you know, we'll see, like, check out the headlights right here. When I turn speed ray on, you know, you start to get a lot of different things happening. So like that's going to help a lot. Now, I'm a big fan of just using reflection planes. Recently, you know, I understand like, you know, the implication of adding a bunch of reflection planes, but I'm willing to pay the price in render time because I have a huge graphics card, and you know, I just go for it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you a trick though. I'm going to add the reflection planes to this level of windows here. I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to show you a little a trick with the sliders that can help. And so those are on completely different faces, so I'll make sure that these guys have a reflection plane. And I think the last one is going to be, oh, I'm having a hard time understanding. Yeah, there we go. So let me add a section plane, or reflection plane right there. That one is definitely not important, but I don't know, I just like to have them all added in. All right, so check this out. I'm going to go back to my reflection planes. Definitely the preview quality, it's better to have that on a lower setting, but I want to show you something, and then I'm going to turn it down. So like, see this window here, like this reflection right here, and it's kind of hard to really understand. You can see these reflections too. Those are speed ray reflections, and they're cool. You know, they're super fast, and they add a little bit of realism, or a bit of realism, and it's better than not, but they're not perfect. Well, the reflection planes are perfect. And if I jack up the reflection threshold, then the reflection plane that I added to these windows is going to start catching this plane as well. So let's just jack up our reflection threshold and see, there it is. So now you're going to get like a perfect reflection over there. So anyway, so that's one way to just turn up the reflection threshold, because, and see, these are still speed ray right here. And I'm just going to turn that up a little more. There we go. And now we've got, you know, our one reflection plane providing reflections for all of those different windows. So that's pretty good. Okay, so let's keep marching. I'm going to do preview quality low, and that's going to help me move fast. All right. Skylight, I'm not going to mess with. Hyperlight, I'm going to turn that all the way up. It's my understanding that hyperlight really eliminates the need for global illumination, and I got to tell you that global illumination is it's a bear. It really slows things down, and you have to pick lights, and I did some tests, and
I mean, I'd love to hear the comments on that and see where it gets to, but maybe on like an interior render, but it's my understanding that Hyperlight really takes care of the global illumination, and so that's what I'm going to lean towards this time. All right, so we're good on all of these guys. I do like to add the handheld camera, and when I do that, I need to double click on my focal length and bring that back up to 45. That gets me right back to that view. I'll add 2-point perspective. I think that's pretty cool too. And by default, it is turned on, so we're good there. And I'm going to add lens flare, and I might just turn up some of the brightness a touch, the bloom amount, and I've got another portion of this tutorial where we're going to do the final tweak. So we're just kind of getting this stuff in place right now. All right. We're not going to mess with depth of field and exposure and all that. Let's keep going. One of my newer preferences is to turn precipitation on. And then I turn off the extra fog addition. And I turn off the particle quantity and get rid of that. And then you can change the phase, so if you want like, everything to look like it's been pouring rain, and that can be really cool, just to see. It just adds more excitement, I would say. I don't know if it's realism or what, but it just makes for a more beautiful image, in my opinion. All right, so we're not going to use real skies. This is a nighttime render. We don't have like a good real sky for that. Like if you look at this, real sky like completely overrides all of the sun settings, and you'd have to go with evening, and we just don't have like a true night render scenario for this, so we're going to get rid of real skies, although I'm a huge fan of that effect. That's all good here. I like the outlines a lot. I knock the transparency all the way down and bring my outline density down a bit, but I think it just, when you're using the lens flare and the bloom, it just gives a cool look. I like it, and if you don't like it, just turn it off. All right, and then we're not all the way there. We're just kind of building the stack, and then we're going to do our final tweaks. But color correction, I always bring that one in, and I think that's it. So a lot of people I know like to use sharpen. Some people use a little bit of noise. I've used that before. I'm kind of getting away from that one. Basically, what I found is that anything that like we get pushback on from a client, if they say, "Hey, why is like depth of field? Why is it blurry?" We just turn it off and get rid of it. I mean, we're looking for less revisions and just an image that's pleasing and doesn't like stoke a lot of or provoke a lot of questions about the actual image. We want to make the image provoke questions about the architecture and the design, not why is it blurry, why is it noisy. So we've just been removing some of those effects as we found that clients push back on them. So, all right, we're good to go there. All right, so this image, let's just render it once and check this out. We'll hit render. In my experience, night renders were brutal. I'm going to do 1920 by 1080 desktop temp. I'm going to call it image 1 and hit render. Now, we dumped a ton of lights in there, and look at this. It's like a couple seconds, and we are good to go. So let's check out this render. I'll hit open folder, hit enter. There's our image. Now, if I were to look at this image and start critiquing this, so far, I'm not going for absolute photorealism because we do have those edges turned on. But in my opinion, this image is still dark. Like, I've got people crossing the street. It looks dangerous. I've heard, I'm just trying to put myself in the, look at this from the eyes of a client who wants to like promote this building. And it's a real dark intersection, and we've got people out in the street, and that's not a good message to send. And furthermore, the building, maybe we could just use a little more light on the building. So in this next portion of the webinar, in this next portion here, we are going to look at our final touches. Okay, so I'm going to go through and we're going to put those final details on this thing and those final tweaks, and I'm going to show you a few like critical tips and tricks. So if
if you've been sticking through this whole thing, this is where the real magic happens. I got a couple new ones that came up on this. So I'm going to walk you through how to give one more pass at this, make it look really good, and then we're going to kick out the rendering and call it good. So let's check it out. I'll close out of this and we'll say okay here. And let's see, we're going to go through and we're going to first, let's go to build mode, and I'm going to bring the sun down again, because we're working with this nighttime render. I want to add some spotlights, and I want those spotlights to just be planted, in front of each one of these trees, and I want them to like shine up at the building. All right. So, let me say this too, like, there's two schools of thought here when it comes to lighting. You can either be super real about it and just put a light where the light source goes, or you can be super artistic about it and just kind of paint the light. Okay, so we're being a little bit, we're dancing the line on both, like a hybrid strategy here. If I had actually had a lighting plan, I probably would have built it, because it's just as easy to build the real lighting plan as it is for me to make something up that is not real. So I would have built the real lighting plan, put in real lights, and then I would have dropped lights in each one of those can lights or each one of those fluorescent lights on the grid. But the point is, when I have a real lighting plan, I'm very accurate. But I can tell you that I also will be real about it and look at the image, and then I'll say the whole building just needs to be brighter. So let's just brighten it up. Let's just be an artist for a moment and put some lights where we want them. Shine some more light on the building. Nothing wrong with that. We're just selling the concept. We're not making a photorealistic lighting study based on IES data. That is not what we're all about here. We're looking to just make a beautiful image that's going to get people psyched about this project. So let's do that. Let's go to our objects and go to place, and we're going to place from our lights and utilities. Now I'm on single placement, and I'll just grab, again, it doesn't matter. I'll just grab like this guy. This has a different kind of a unique profile to it. All right, and I'm going to plant a light here and here and here, and here and here, and I might even do one out here. All right, now let's see. I'm going to use my select tool, and I've got one of these lights selected. On my advanced options up here, I can select all identical objects. All right, so there's my lights. I might lift those up off the ground just a little bit. All right, so see they're kind of picking up into the sky there. And then I'm going to use this target light. All right, so I'll click target light. Now I can click on the building, and look at that. Now it's like all those lights are like shining up at the building, and it's throwing some cool shadows on here. And maybe I want them to target this way. I don't know, like you can kind of click around and see what gives you the look that you want. And of course you could also like, target some of them this way, like right here, and then target these guys a little bit differently. All right, so I'll say okay, deselect all, and then I'm just going to select, if I hold control, I can select these three, and then I can do another target light and shine these up here. So I don't know, it's pretty cool. Like I think that's going to be kind of an interesting look. We'll see where it gets us, but that's going to be detail number one, is just throwing some more interesting shadows up onto the building. And let me do this too. I'm going to try another. I actually didn't mess with this when I was taking a look and writing this tutorial, but I'm going to select all identical objects, and we're going to set our shadows to high. Look at that. That's super cool. So medium it makes them a little bit low, and then dynamic, what's that all about? Oh, that's pretty cool too. So that's how you make those shadows move. I'll just go with high because we're only working on a still, but how cool is that? I like that a lot. It just gives a different depth to the building. All right, now this one, I'm gonna hit deselect, and we're good to go there. Let's see, let's go with the next final touch on this image is going to be emissive materials. Now these guys not glowing is definitely a missed opportunity. So I'm going to go over here to my materials and click on this material 7. I'm going to make it a standard material, And that standard material is going to have on its settings, we're going to make it emissive. All right. And also I need to give it a colorization, and we're going to make that color red. Like, check that out. Like, and so now all these lights are glowing. So that's super cool, right? But you want to go easy on the emissive. So I can tell you that like just a little bit, and it seemed to me that like 2.5 was the right amount. So like just a little bit. I'm going to actually double click and type 2.5, enter. Now it might not be glowing as much as you want it to glow in build mode, but when I dial up my lens flare, those are going to come alive. Now, same thing down here. I'm going to come in and set up our emissive material, make it standard, and colorize it and make it emissive. So again, now all these guys are emissive. And I can tell you that we did do a really nice blog post on Lumion lighting. It's been a couple years, but it's still very relevant. And I just broke down each of the different light types and what you can expect from them. So like a spotlight casts shadows, omni lights don't, emissive, it won't cast shadows. If you just really want to dig in and understand each of the different lighting types or light types inside of Lumion, we have a blog post on that one, and it's just sift through the archives there. It's maybe 2 or 3 pages back, but it's called like light types in Lumion or something like that. All right, again, emissive, let's go with like 2.5. You don't want to go overboard on any lighting. And actually, for that matter, I'll just comment briefly on our objects. You know, our actual spotlights are all exactly the same, and they're all set to 300. So I don't mess with that brightness all that much. I can tell you for sure you don't want to dial the brightness way up. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of them. So I'll select all identical objects. And I mean, you know, that brightness gets way out of hand. And so really what's best is like stick to the defaults of like 300 and if anything, back it down and use your effects to bring it back to life. So, but you know, keep everything at kind of a default low level, because otherwise you start battling and like making one thing brighter, and then you got to make something else brighter to make it, you know, in the same realm of lighting up your model, and it just turns into something that's really tricky to get it right. So just, if you're not familiar, just leave the default settings alone. All right, so our emissive materials are hooked up. We're good there. Now, this next tip for you is check out these people when I look at this image, all right? Like, the people are all dark. Well, we're going to be artists here, and we're going to drop an omni on each one of these groupings of people. So the way it looks now, and then we're going to go over here, and here's like this group of girls crossing, crossing the street. We don't want it to look like they're in danger. So I'm going to go with just a real lightweight, simple omni light, and I'm going to place it, and if I hold H, I can kind of lift it up like that, and I'm just going to drop it right here. And then let's, head over here, and this guy, I'm going to click it like kind of right in front of him. And let's see, these guys right here, I'll do like one there, one for them, and just get these people glowing, I don't want them to be like in danger or appear to be like super dark. And, it's faking the lighting, but, it's okay. That's what this is all about, is just, making the pretty picture. So now all these people are lit up, and now tell me what you think about this image. When I go back to photo, and now like those people no longer look like they're in the shadows and they're in danger. It's just a much better look. Okay. Now the last thing, and this is just this is all personal preference, and whenever I'm doing these tutorials, I always go a little bit overboard. I mean, we wouldn't. I would doubt that a client would have us, put like a gigantic moon in the background, but you can go nuts on that, and you got to find the heading for the moon and the moon size. If you make it real big, I might not be able to find this right now. It's a little tricky. There you go. There it is. And then bring the moon size down. so you can like get the moon in the background. You can get like, if you hold shift, you can kind of move that in a different speed. So let me get the moon height up there. That's kind of cool. You could go and add in also your sky and clouds. I kind of got used to not using these because I use the real skies so much, but I forgot how cool the Lumion skies, the default clouds are. They're pretty cool. It seems to me that like low clouds, you want to back off of those and stick more with like the high clouds. Those seem to be a little bit more subtle. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go into build mode, and I'm just going to throw some fireworks in the background. Now I can tell you that I got these fireworks from formfonts.com. These guys are great. This is where I get a ton of my models. So like if you just go to formfonts.com and search for fireworks, there you go. Now all these guys, I got a bunch of them downloaded already, but anyway, they're super easy to use. I can just go to import new model, and I'm going to go to my visualization, resources, components, and we have like miscellaneous effects, and that's where I keep like, we have a rainbow and some pretty cool fireworks. So I'll just grab, I'm not even sure which one's which. So fireworks 3, we'll bring that in, and then I'm going to hold H, and I can kind of scoot that up. I'll place that one, and then you can use H again, bring that up higher, and if I use my materials, actually I'm sorry, let me import one more of those fireworks. So import, and I'll bring in that first one as well, and say OK, and then drop those in the background, and that's fine, we'll just use that many. And I'm gonna, like, these are not gonna be face me or billboards, they're gonna, I need them to kind of manually face where they go, like that. And then I need these fireworks to kind of lift up in the sky. That's gonna be another thing, although I think they're probably in decent shape there. And we need to make them emissive. So I'm gonna go to standard and just dial up their emissiveness of touch, like that, and make it standard, and dial up the emissiveness a touch. All right, so now we got some fireworks in the background. All I'm getting at is that there's a lot of options. It's super quick to add some of these kind of fun touches to your renderings. Actually, I did pretty decent there. So that's pretty cool. Those are the final touches on this one. Let's render this out at 1920 by 1080, and I'm gonna call this image 2. All right, fire that one off. And look at those shadows of the trees up on the building. The people are lit up. I didn't even tweak the lens flare yet, but that's what you would use to really get the these different lights and things glowing. Let's try that real quick. I'll go back to let's see, my lens flare, and then like the master brightness. That's how you get it to really blow up. But what I found that was pretty cool is the streak count. If you bring it all the way down, you can see there's a lot of streaks. If you bring it down, it just does like, straight up and down streaks, which I thought was pretty cool. And so, you can kind of see a little bit of streaking, light streaking up here. And once it renders, it seems to kind of pop a little bit more, but, I'll bring up the master brightness. Me personally, I just like an image that's I would rather it be overexposed than underexposed. A bright image definitely has a more positive impact than a dreary dim image, but find the balance. But let's render this one more time. I'm just going to overwrite image 2, and then we're going to compare them and see what kind of a difference we made on that final touch there. So yeah, when we render, you can definitely see more of that lens flare happening. So I would definitely, if this was truly a client render, I would probably back that off. But anyway, here's where we were, and let's see. So this is the first image that we just kind of on the first pass, and that's where we got to with a lot of extra stuff going on. But anyway, point of this is to show you what's possible. I want you to understand that, like, you know, the techniques, and I do exaggerate things. I do take it to, like, you know, an exaggerated level so that you can actually see what's happening. But now it's on you. You know, you understand this stuff, watch this again and again, and then you can dial it back, and you can use these techniques and these tips and tricks in the right place. So we went a little bit over as usual, it seems, but I think that was pretty cool. I don't know. I know how impactful it is to master node placement. You will save yourself a ton of time. And when it comes to lighting and when it comes to planting plans, and just do it in SketchUp and then do your node placement. Get that skill under your belt. You'll save yourself a ton of time and headaches, and you'll be more precise. I mean, it's better all the way around. So, I'm sure you guys know who I am by now. I'm Mike Brightman. My company's Brightman Designs. We do offer design, drafting, visualization, and workflow training services. If you ever needed one-on-one help, check out our website. If you wanted to see our SketchUp for Professionals course, that's all on our sketchupforprofessionals.com. So please, if you like what you saw today, tell a colleague, share the video, pass it around. That's always super helpful for us to keep things going and keep the content pumping out, because we are sharing all of the secrets. No joke here. This is what we do. This is how we're fast. I want you to be fast too. So anyway, thanks so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial, the next webinar, and I'm gonna hop over to the chat panel, answer a few questions. So stick around, or otherwise we'll catch you next time. Thank you. All right, let's see. Node placement, yes. And Brad, with node placement, it is super confusing. The best advice I could give you there is to like dig in and goof it up, and just tinker with the model. Like, do something real simple until you just have it so dialed in. Let's see, and and then Brad, your more specific question about using the Collada files and the SKP file, you know where that came in, and this is my recollection of that issue. That came in when Lumion was like, what was it? It was like a version behind on SketchUp. So like SketchUp 2019 came out, but Lumion had just come out with a release, and so you couldn't really work with the new SketchUp files, and so we were doing this like either a back save or or saving it as a Collada. In my experience, the SketchUp 2019 has been perfect, so no issues there. But yeah, you can definitely use a Collada file. A few tips, the node itself cannot be a complicated object. It can't have multiple groups inside, because each one of those groups inside that node will get an object placed on it. Also, it's my recollection that you can only have one material, and I forget if that's the case or not. But I think that when you have a bunch of different materials inside of your node file, it goofs it up. So anyway, what I do know for sure is that the nodes that I created are rock solid and they do work. So if you want to save yourself some trouble, just use those. And certainly you could kind of tweak them and make them your own and save them to your library. So nice, Chris Welton, what's happening, man? Let's see. And then the node import, and Will asking about why is the node import file considered a temp file? Well, temp to me is like my it's one step towards the trash can. If I delete everything in that temp folder, then I'm not going to be upset about that. And so the reason it's a throwaway file is because I'm going to use it right now. I'm going to do my node placement, and it gets trashed out of Lumion anyway. And if I needed to do it again, I could either, I could save those node files, and I do, like if I'm actually working on the project, we always have a miscellaneous folder, and in that miscellaneous folder, I would just put it in there, and but 9 out of 10 times it just seems like it's a throwaway, and I'm just going to rebuild it anyway. So that's the idea there. And so any of anything in my temp folder, I just go in there and trash everything. And so like I use that for like quick downloads and things like that. Is there a similar function in Vectorworks? Yeah, there should be. I'm not familiar with Vectorworks, but if you just plant these nodes, if you like open them in SketchUp, you could probably save it out as a collada. Or actually on the 3D Warehouse, you can in fact download, whenever you download a file, I'm pretty sure you can download a collada. Let me look. Let me type in Lumion Nodes and take a look at like this guy. Let me look at my download options. Yeah, so you can download this as a collada, and I'm guessing that like most 3D modeling programs will respond to collada, or you could export it out of SketchUp as a DWG. But anyway, it will go into Vectorworks. Not as familiar with Vectorworks, but you could certainly save out a DWG, or there's got to be a way to take a grouping of nodes and save it out with the same, but I'm just not as familiar. Yes, targeting lights, that is pretty slick. And the fireworks, very nice, you know it, man. And so can the nodes be exported as a group and made into a component after it's grouped? Yes, yep, absolutely. So in SketchUp, when you create a group, so if I were to, I'll just bring up my nodes here, and let's just say like I want like a row of shrubs here, make a copy and do that like 10 times. And then I'm going to select all of these different shrubs here, so I'll get to that strategic view. Now, if I make these into a group, that is kind of handy because now I can continue working in there. And when I'm ready, I can right click, make component, and then I can set the component axes over here and shrubs like that. And so now, and I can continue to work in here. Maybe I want some shrubs over on the other side of the street too. So you're all good. You just keep working and then you save them out. So yeah, definitely. You can make them a group first, and that'll help you keep them organized. Nice. Thanks, Will. Appreciate you coming in, and yeah, definitely check out those other tutorials. That lighting blog post, I might even just sort that out because I can't remember what it was called, but I'll recognize it when I see it. So here you're probably familiar with our blog, and I know that I think it was called like lighting types, or I'll just go back, and I know it was kind of a earlier one. Here's subtle lighting in Lumion. That was a cool one. Capturing Lumion interiors, maybe. Yep. So it's capturing Lumion interiors. And you can see this is the days when I was using a lot of noise. I don't like that image anymore. Anyway, so like the sun, you can see the effects of the sun. You can see the effects of like a spotlight and omni lights, and just get an understanding of like what each one of these does. Emissive materials don't even cast light. They just look like they're casting light. So just really breaks it down, explains it, explains the strategy behind placing these. Our effects. I mean, it's a little old, but honestly, these tutorials are killer. And actually, I think this is part of our SketchUp for Professionals course. So if you head over to our SUFP, SketchUp for Professionals, 9 of the 12 hours of that course are totally free. And I can tell you that the Lumion portion of this course is free. So give that a twirl. It's definitely solid. Okay, so how to fix the circles of light in the ceiling. Yes. So with that, I think you would, I mean, it's just it's the way that it is what the light is doing, right? So one thing you could do is use, I was goofing around with some different techniques. So let me show you something here in, I'll go to build mode, and if you drop an area light, so if I go to my objects, place, and place a light, I'm going to go to area lights, and I'll just use this big area light. All right, and I'm going to put it right on the roof here for now, like that. And then I'm going to select my area light. It is already selected. You can kind of see it there. And then the width is going to be as wide as it can, and the length. And I'm going to just move it up a little bit. Let's see, it's this dot here. Okay, so that's an area light. All right. Now, based on that blog post that I was showing you, an area light will push light all the way through this building. It doesn't cast shadows. All right. So one thing that I found, and I tinkered with the idea of avoiding spotlights in this building, but instead I went with I just stuck with the spotlight. So we're going to flip this so it's going up to -90, like that. And then I'm going to just kind of come down here. All right, and now watch the change that happens when I move this. And I'll just use my height tool. All right, so like watch what happens to the ceiling, like that. You know, so now it's pushing light up, right? So like you could drop this area light here and like, you know, tune up the brightness, or you could have a couple of area lights going and get a more even glow. But I guess what I'm getting at is that the way that I have those, you know, those spotlights, it's like that's what it's going to do. Let me see if maybe there's a better answer I can have by tweaking some of these guys. Like, so I'm going to get to like a strategic selection here and just hit, you know, everything inside of my building like that. So I think we're good. All right. So then maybe what I could do is, you know, the cone angle, make that as wide as it can be, and you know it's kind of hard to see now. The brightness, you know, maybe if the brightness on that was tuned up, but I have a feeling that that's going to get really messy. So honestly, I would leave these alone at 300. And also the experimentation I was doing, 300 is what we want. When it came to global illumination, you know, global illumination has always been a bit of a mystery to me as to exactly what it's doing, why it's doing that. So, you know, what I would probably do is I would build like a ceiling grid in here, and then I would drop a few like fluorescent lights, and I would make the light emissive out of the fluorescent light panel, the 2x4 or the 2x2, and just make it look like it's glowing. And then I would just drop like some Omni lights in there and just make it, you know, kind of glow so that we're getting a more even glow. But anyway, back to our idea of global illumination. It's so slow, and you know, it's my understanding, you know, you go in here and, you know, you pick like a handful of these lights, and you know, now like it's actually bouncing this light around, and so I'm just gonna pick like a bunch of these guys up on the top floor, and let me get a better view. So like this, so that I can see. I just want to focus on like where, you know, this guy's kind of getting these circles on the ceiling. Now, here's the critical thing: is you got to turn up your spotlight global illumination amount. And so, you know, you can see that as I tune that up, it's getting pretty high. I'm gonna go with I don't know. I guess I'll go with 1,000. And let's just render it. This will be image number 3, but I can tell you that this is going to take, you know, it slows things down. Let's see what this does for us. I'll do 1920 by 1080, image 3, and now it's got to think. You know, now we're slowing down. So you can see our render time is drastically different. So we'll let that cook. But to sum that up, I think that you could pick a softer light profile, make sure it's real wide, maybe pull those down I think that you could reconsider the ceiling being an actual grid, like just use a ceiling grid texture and then drop some 2x4 panels in where you're going to have an emissive material so it looks like the lights are on. You could just drop omni lights, like just do like an omni grid, and so that there's just light. I don't think that we need perfect spotlights. So maybe that would have been an option where if I took those nodes from this portion of the building and did a different node placement with omni lights, so we have this nice clean grid of omnis that just brightens it up. That would have been cool too. So let's see. That's taken forever, huh? Yeah. I mean, but still not bad, but it's just drastically increases. So here's image 2, and here's image 3. And I mean, other than just being a bit brighter, I'm just not sure what we're actually getting out of it, and I think that I could get these to be brighter. So anyway, I've backed off on global illumination. Seems like the results, the testing that I've done, Hyperlight handles it, and that's that. So let's see. Cool. Thanks. Thanks. S-Banks 123. Appreciate you coming in. And then Brad, would you recommend for more realistic shadows with the lights to change the properties to high? Yeah, that could be it. I mean, I guess I would continue tinkering. Like if I go back to build mode and then make that selection. Let's see. Let's come up here a little bit. And so I'll, kind of make this strategic selection here, roughly like that. Let's see, I think I can do better. Whatever, that's fine, like that. And yeah, maybe if the shadows were on high, maybe that's going to give us a more realistic. I was looking, I want to say there used to be a fall off. Something about that, the fall off, but I could be making that up. But yeah, medium, high, yeah, I would just tinker with this stuff. And ultimately, I think maybe a better choice would be Omni if that's the look you're going for, because you'd get a more even, everything's lit up type of a look. Or I would even just, I don't know, I'd build out something, just give a little more detail. So. Nice. Ian, appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming in. And then another question. Yes, when replacing nodes with nature objects, can the objects be randomized? Maybe in size or rotation? No, they cannot. But a plugin like Scatter would very likely handle that. Now, I gotta say, I am no pro at Scatter, but I've heard really good things. And so what you could do is make like a handful of different nodes that it's going to scatter in place all over. Then there's another plugin, and I gotta tell you, I was using this plugin and it hiccuped and it crashed on me, and so I didn't want to demo it, but I do use this one, and that is Selection Toys. So if you were to use Scatter, and let's say that you had like 10 different nodes, right? So, and that could even be as simple as like just, taking this and just make unique, make unique, make unique, make unique. And then you run Scatter, and Scatter gives you like kind of these tools to just, drop stuff all over your model. And it's going to rotate it and do all those things for you. So your nodes are going to be randomized. And then what you can do is if you right click and choose instances and select all, see, that's going to select one instance of a component. And then you can do, make that into a component, set your component axes, and go through all that. So it would be like this production line where let's say you have these 10 nodes, you scatter them all over, you right click on one,
You select all the instances, make it a component, set your component axes, save it out, delete it. Right click on the next, select all instances, make it a component, on and on. So that way, I think that plugin would, I know that would at least get you random placements, a lot of them, and random rotations. As far as scale goes, that would not happen. You would have to then, I would just suggest using a different tree in that case. So close. I got you close, I hope. So let's see. Yeah, and Ian, on that for the ceiling, yeah, I mean, another option would just be to make it emissive, you know, so it just looks like it's a little bit lit up and glowing. That could be done too. So that would be possible. And then let's see, Christoph asking about, first of all, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it, and you're welcome. And we are going to do a Lumion Workflow series on interiors. So that's definitely on the boards, and that is coming up. And so I'm pretty sure, I haven't picked the project yet, but we have a really cool hotel room model, and that's what I was going to use. It's a nice, clean, modern design. And so we are aware we've done some exteriors, exterior daytime, exterior nighttime, and now we got to dig in on interiors. And so that's going to be coming up on these Lumion Workflow series. So definitely. So look for that. I mean, you know, we're going to do another one here probably in a month or two. Yeah, 2 months, something like that. You know, definitely this fall we'll have another one coming up. So I'll take that as a vote to get the interiors going first. But yeah, that's definitely time for that. So nice. Well, I gotta say, appreciate you guys coming in. Thank you again, and that's all the questions in the chat, and I guess I should probably go get lunch. So anyways, appreciate it. Catch you guys soon. Thank you.